The marble corridors of the Palatine Hill shimmered under the torchlight. But beneath their polished beauty lay secrets soaked in blood. Rome, the eternal city, had become a battlefield not just of armies, but of families, senators, generals, and whispering poisoners. Emperor Tiberius sat in silence, his old eyes glaring out from the shadows of Capri's cliffs. He no longer trusted Rome's air, nor its people. Too many died mysteriously drowning in wine or collapsing mid-sentence. Poison had become the empire's new sword. Rome had once been built on the courage of soldiers and the ambition of consuls. But in the imperial era, the path to power twisted through chambers of deceit. It wasn't swords that killed emperors. Now it was servants with silver trays. Tiberius knew this. He had watched his own family turn into threats. Nephews smiled with false loyalty. Governors sent flattering letters, each line possibly masking intent to betray. In the empire, a compliment could be as lethal as a dagger. Germanicus, the Golden, boy of Rome, had once been the hope of the people, handsome, brave, and adored by the legions. But he had died young and painfully. Whispers still claimed he was poisoned, his liver rotting from the inside out. The investigation led to Piso, the governor of Syria, who had served under Germanicus. But Piso himself soon perished under mysterious circumstances. Rome held trials, burned letters, executed servants, but the truth remained buried in shadows. Poison was perfect for Rome's elite. It was quiet, it was untraceable, and most importantly, it left the Senate with clean hands. No need for civil wars. It's just a little vial in the right goblet. Caligula, the heir after Tiberius, knew this lesson well. When he entered power, he smiled before the Senate, but his heart dripped venom. He'd seen what happened to beloved heirs like Germanicus, and new survival required brutality. He made senators kneel, declared himself a god. He named his horse a consul, not for madness, but to mock the system that pretended to be noble, while spilling blood at banquets. But Caligula's reign was short. The Praetorian Guard struck him down in a hallway, his blood smearing the white marble. Rome applauded in secret. The poisoned throne was empty again. Claudius, the uncle no one expected, became emperor next. Limping, stammering, and mocked by the elite, he nonetheless ruled effectively. But even he could not escape the empire's curse. His wife, Agrippina, the younger, had ambitions far darker than loyalty. She wanted the throne for her son Nero. So, Claudius's last supper was seasoned with mushrooms soaked in death. Nero ascended young, charming at first. He sang, he played the lyre, he bathed Rome in entertainment. But as power ripened, so did madness. His enemies died by cup and blade. His mother, Agrippina, the very architect of his rise, was drowned, or so the official story claimed. Rome lived in fear. The emperor's smile could be followed by a visit from assassins in the night. Senators drank from their own cups cautiously. Food tasters were the highest-paid slaves. Even Stoic philosophers like Seneca, Nero's former tutor, found themselves forced to commit suicide with wrists slit open in hot baths, accused by rumors whispered in candlelit rooms. The imperial palace had become a tomb in progress. Every dinner could be a death sentence, every glance a trap. The throne of Rome had turned into a stage of execution, elegant, polished, and soaked in silent screams. The problem with poison was that it made everyone paranoid. No one could be trusted. Not lovers, not slaves, not even family, especially. Not family. Nero's own end came in flames. Declared a public enemy, abandoned by his guards. He took his own life with a blade, too cowardly to die by poison like so many he had condemned. But Rome was not cleansed. The throne passed to Galba, then Otho, then Vitaliusol, in rapid chaos. Each man seized the purple robe, but none wore it long. Civil war raged. Poison turned to open battle once more. Finally, Vespasian rose from the ashes, stabilizing the empire. Even he watched his back. His son Titus took the throne briefly, and then died suddenly. Some claimed it was illness. Others whispered. The ancient words again, poisoned. His brother Domitian, who followed him, ruled as a tyrant. Suspicion haunted every feast. The deeper the empire grew, the more complex the betrayals. Cups laced with venom became as political as Senate speeches. Poison became Rome's silent language. Domitian's own death came at the hands of palace insiders. A freedwoman stabbed him in the groin while conspirators rushed in. He died quickly but not quietly. Each emperor's portrait hung in marble butt. Each throne held rot beneath. The curse of Caesar's crown was not just political, it was mortal. Poison and betrayal were the empire's true inheritance. Years later, even the Antonine dynasty could not escape. Lucius Verus died suspiciously during a campaign. Co-emperor with Marcus Aurelius, his death raised eyebrows more than tears. Senate never investigated. They had learned in Rome knowing too much was dangerous. The philosopher king Marcus Aurelius watched the city decay beneath gold-plated ceilings. He wrote of virtue while generals plotted in back rooms. Even he could not prevent the rise of his corrupt son Commodus. Commodus, obsessed with gladiators, ruled like a mad god. He renamed months after himself. And when he was finally poisoned by his concubine Marcia, he vomited only for the wrestling champion Narcissus to finish the job with his bare hands. From Augustus to Commodus, the poisoned throne left behind a trail of kings and corpses. Rome's glory was soaked in hemlock, belladonna, and arsenic, and still the people cheered. Parades rolled through blood-stained streets. Statues were raised. The empire grew. But beneath the splendor, the throne kept claiming its price. Rome did not die by the sword. It died one cup at a time. The death of Commodus marked the end of the Antonine dynasty and the start of an even more unstable era. Rome's throne was now an open wound, bleeding emperors faster than it could seat them. Pertinax was chosen next, an old senator with noble intentions. He tried to restore order, but order had no place in a city run by greed. The Praetorian Guard, angry over unpaid bribes, stormed the palace and cut him down. Then came the unthinkable. The throne of Rome was auctioned. Literally, the guards offered it to the highest bidder. A wealthy senator named Didius Julianus paid for it with gold. Rome watched in horror. The empire that once conquered the world now sold its soul to the richest man in the room. But Julianus's reign lasted mere weeks. Septimius Severus marched on Rome, executed him, and declared himself emperor. Severus ruled with an iron fist. He respected no Senate traditions. His loyalty lay with the legions. He said openly, "Pay the soldiers and ignore everyone else." It was the empire's new motto. But when he died, his sons Caracalla and Geta were meant to share the empire. They were brothers. And in Rome, brotherhood was often fatal. Caracalla invited Geta to a peace meeting with their mother present. As Geta entered the room, assassins leaped forward, stabbing him to death while their mother screamed in horror. Blood splashed on her dress. Caracalla ruled, alone, cold, ruthless, and paranoid. He built monuments, raised taxes, and murdered thousands. Even the famed baths of Caracalla could not wash away his crimes. He met his end on the road, stabbed by a soldier. While urinating by the roadside? His own Praetorian prefect Macrinus had ordered the hit. Macrinus became emperor briefly, but power was a poison he couldn't handle. Soon, he was defeated by a teenage boy, Lagabalized, backed by the Severn women. Elagabalus brought scandal to new heights. He married priests, danced in women's clothes, and replaced Jupiter with a foreign sun god. Rome boiled with fury. Eventually, even the palace couldn't protect him. His own grandmother approved his death. Elagabalus and his mother were butchered, their bodies dragged through the streets and thrown in the Tiber. The poisoned throne didn't just kill with toxins, killed with insanity. Each new emperor was more unhinged, more dangerous. The crown had become a curse. Alexander Severus followed a boy emperor, controlled by his mother. He was mild, too gentle for an empire now run by wolves. When the legions lost faith, they killed both mother and son. Then came the barracks, emperors, dozens of generals rising and falling in rapid succession. Each wore the purple. Each died violently. Poison had taken a back seat now. Swords did the work openly. Maximinus Thrax, a giant of a man, ruled with terror but never even visited Rome. He was finally decapitated by his own troops. Gordian I and II ruled together in Africa, one old, one young. Their reign lasted barely a month. One fell in battle, the other committed suicide. The Senate, desperate, chose Pupinus and Balbinustu senators who despised each other. When they tried to rule together, the Praetorian Guard ended the farce. By dragging them from their chambers and stabbing them to death, the empire had become a kaleidoscope of emperors each, more fleeting than the last. Some died in bed, but most were betrayed by their own men. Gallienus, Decius, Valerian, and Aurelian all rose, fell, bled.
Oh.
Valerian was captured alive by the Persian king and used as a human footstool. He died in chains, his skin flayed and dyed, red as a trophy. Even the gods seemed to abandon Rome. Plagues swept through cities. Crops failed. Barbarians pushed at the borders. And still, senators poisoned wine and whispered names into execution lists. Aurelian, perhaps the last true soldier emperor, restored order briefly. He crushed rebellions and repelled invaders. But he was killed by his own secretary over a forged document. Treachery had become routine by the time Diocletian arrived. Rome had lost all sense of stability. Diocletian divided the empire into east and west, appointing coemperors. He believed the throne's poison could be diluted. He ruled with brilliance, but also brutality. He persecuted Christians, executed dissenters, and burned churches. But unlike others, he chose to retire peacefully into his garden, first emperor to do so. Yet even his careful system collapsed after his exit. Civil wars reignited. Successors fought successors. The poison of ambition was incurable. Eventually, Constantine the Great rose from the ashes. He embraced Christianity, conquered rivals, and founded a new capital, Constantinople. For the first time in centuries, Rome had a unifying vision, but even Constantine wasn't immune. He executed his own son and wife after accusations of betrayal. Historians still debate who lied, who schemed, who died unjustly. The throne had changed, but the poison remained. Only the method had evolved, from mushrooms to forged letters, from secret vials to political marriages. Each emperor sat on marble butt, ruled in fear. No one was safe. Not generals, not heirs, not even gods. The throne consumed all. As Constantine's sons divided the empire again, Rome's fate splintered. Greed outweighed unity. The West grew weaker. The East watched with caution. By the time Julian the Apostate tried to revive paganism, the empire had already shifted. His reforms failed. He died on campaign, possibly from a Persian spear or another secret hand. The poison was no longer just physical. It was in the culture, in the fear, in the weight of the laurel crown. Rome had built the greatest empire in history, but it had also built the deadliest chair in history. It's the imperial throne. As the 4th century bled into the 5th, the Roman Empire was no longer one. East and West stood apart, two halves of a dying giant. In the West, the poison that had once trickled through goblets now surged through every level of government. Honorius ruled the Western Empire like a frightened child. More interested in his pet chickens than the crumbling provinces he delegated. Power to corrupt advisors. Rome itself, once invincible, was now vulnerable. Alaric, king of the Visigoths, invaded Italy and marched on Rome in 410 AD. He sacked the Eternal City, a humiliation not seen in 800 years. The Senate trembled, but it was too late. The poisoned throne had bred cowards and sycophants. No generals of Caesar's caliber remained. No courage, only calculation. Even when the Goths offered peace, the imperial court bickered and delayed. Ravenna became the capital, a swampy refuge far from the ruins of Rome. Honorius hid there. While the empire fell apart piece by piece, provinces were lost not by battle, but by betrayal, bribes, and silence. In the east, meanwhile, emperors like Theodosius and Arcadius played their own games. Intrigue was constant. Eunuchs and court women held more power than senators. The palace was a maze of secrets and spies. Pulcheria, sister to Theodosius II, ruled from behind a veil. Intelligent and devout, she manipulated bishops and generals alike. Not with poison, but with prayers sharpened into policy. Her rival, Empress Aelia Eudocia, fell from grace through accusations of adultery, perhaps false, perhaps not. In Constantinople, character assassination was deadlier than any blade. Back in the West, power had shifted to generals like Stilicho and later Ricimer men, who made and unmade emperors like chess pieces. The title emperor was hollow. Real power came from armies and betrayal. Emperor Valentinian III, weak and vain, murdered his best general, Idius. During a private audience, "You've cut off your right hand," someone whispered afterward. Months later, Valentinian was assassinated in public, stabbed while watching gladiators. The throne changed hands rapidly. Petronius Maximus lasted just 77 days. When the Vandals arrived, the people revolted. Maximus was dragged through the streets and torn apart by a mob. Rome was no longer protected. The Vandals sacked it, looting its treasures and mocking its gods. The poisoned throne had finally bled the empire dry, as the Western Empire collapsed. Puppet emperors rose and fell at Ricimer's whim. Severus III, Anthemius Olybrius, all crowned, all discarded. Their names faded even as their deaths stained. Palace floors. Eventually, a boy named Romulus Augustulus was made emperor, a cruel echo of Rome's founder. He never ruled. Odoacer, a Germanic general, deposed him in 476 AD. No blood was spilled, no riots, just silence. The Roman Empire in the West was dead, not with a bang but with a whisper. But in the East, Constantinople endured, and with it, the poisoned legacy continued. Emperor Zeno survived plots and riots, only to be buried alive, accidentally or deliberately, remains unknown. Some claim they heard scratching from inside his sealed sarcophagus. Anastasius came next cunning. And rich, he reformed the treasury, built walls, and bribed enemies. But whispers accused him of heresy, of favoring monophysites. He died suddenly in his sleep, face twisted in a grimace. Poison. Perhaps then came Justinian, the last great emperor of Rome's spirit. He rebuilt Constantinople, commissioned the Hagia Sophia, and reconquered lost western lands. But his reign was stained with blood. His wife, Empress Theodora, rose from the lowest rungs of society, a circus performer turned queen. She ruled with iron will, silencing rivals, exiling bishops, and possibly ordering poisonings. When the Nika riots nearly burned the city, Theodora refused to flee. "Purple is a good color for a shroud," she declared. She saved the throne but also sanctioned a massacre of over 30,000 people. The cost of power was always blood. Whether by mob, blade, or cup, emperors survived by killing faster than their enemies. Justinian outlived many conspiracies but not death. When he died, no heir remained. Factions clashed. The throne was again exposed. Later emperors like Phocas ruled with horror. A former centurion, Phocas seized power by overthrowing and executing Morissa, along with Morris's 6 sons. Murdered in front of him, Phocas grew paranoid, executing even his allies. His portraits were defaced across cities. Finally, Heraclius marched on Constantinople, captured Phocas, and publicly mutilated him before execution. The throne was poisoned, not just metaphorically, but with actual corpses. Heraclius tried to restore stability, but the Persian Wars and later the Muslim conquests shattered the empire's power again. Rome's legacy was now shadows and walls. In Constantinople, the imperial court turned even more ritualistic, secluded behind gilded screens, where emperors lived as prisoners of ceremony. But poison still found its way in. Court eunuchs wielded vast power. Some were loyal, others whispered names to the executioner. And still, the palace went on burning incense while plotting deaths. Assassinations were wrapped in prayers. Emperors were buried under golden domes. But in the back chambers, goblets were tested twice. Food tasters became indispensable, and trust was a myth by the 8th century. Constantinople had become a fortress of rituals, curses, and codes. The Byzantine emperors cloaked themselves in divine authority, but their courts were dens of betrayal and ambition. The Isaurian dynasty began with Leo III, a soldier who rose through military ranks and seized power during chaos. He introduced iconoclasm, banning religious images, which earned him bitter enemies within the church. Leo survived assassination attempts, uprisings, and plots, often countering them with swift executions. The throne was no longer just a seat of power. It was a crucible that burned anyone too weak to defend it. His son, Constantine V, continued iconoclasm and intensified repression. Monks were tortured. Churches were stripped. His critics said he was cursed. Supporters called him the dung name behind closed doors. Suspicion reached fever pitch. One by one, rivals disappeared, prisoned, blinded, or exiled. A smile in court could be fatal. Even family members betrayed each other to survive. When Irene of Athens rose to power as empress, she shattered all expectations. First she ruled beside her son, Constantine VI. But when he asserted independence, she had him blinded personally. He died shortly after, leaving her the first woman to rule the empire in her own name. The throne was now literally drenched in blood and motherly betrayal. Irene's court glittered with gold and art. But behind the curtains, ministers were poisoned, rivals were exiled, and even servants vanished for speaking out. Eventually, she was overthrown and exiled by her own finance minister. Power had no loyalty. The throne, like always, consumed those who sat on it too long. The Macedonian dynasty followed, bringing a new golden age. Basil, a founder of the line, had once been a stable boy. He murdered Emperor Michael III and seized the throne for himself. To justify his rule, Basil rewrote history. He declared the previous emperor unfit and erased opposition. The imperial scribes became his weapon, poisoning memory instead of cups. His successors, Leo VI and Constantine VII, ruled with wisdom, but paranoia remained embedded in the throne. Secret police watched the streets. Spies filled the halls. Even the learned Constantine VII, who authored books on governance, ruled under constant fear. His enemies weren't just outside the walls, they were sleeping in the palace. Basil II, the Bulgar slayer, ruled for nearly 50 years. He was ruthless in war, but cold and solitary in court. He never married, never trusted anyone. His closest companion was his sword. Under Basil, poisonings declined, but not distrust. He crippled the aristocracy, redistributed land, and surrounded himself with eunuchs. Only the sexless and childless could be loyal, he believed. His death left a vacuum. The following emperors were weak, greedy, or incompetent. The empire's golden age dimmed into rot. By the time of the Comnenian dynasty, internal betrayal had become tradition. Alexios I, Komnenos, inherited a broken empire and spent most of his reign extinguishing fires lit by relatives. Even during the First Crusade, when Latin armies poured into Constantinople, Alexios worried less about Turks and more about backstabbing courtiers. His daughter, Komnene, wrote a flattering history of him, but even she tried to usurp the throne. For her husband, after Alexios's death, her plot failed. She was exiled to a convent. The 12th century brought more palace poison. Andronikos I Komnenos seized power with promises of reform, then turned tyrant. He tortured, mutilated, and executed at will. His fall was as brutal as his reign. The mob tore him apart in the hippodrome. His corpse was dragged through the streets, mutilated beyond recognition. The Latin Crusaders, seeing Byzantium's weakness, struck. In 1204, they sacked Constantinople in one of history's most shocking betrayals. The imperial city was looted, its relics stolen, its women defiled. The poisoned throne had not just infected rulers, it had destroyed an entire civilization from within. The empire eventually retook the city in 1261, but it was only a shadow of its former self. The Paleologan dynasty ruled a shrinking realm, clinging to ceremony while provinces fell. Michael VIII Paleologos blinded a child emperor to take the crown, then declared his reign legitimate through divine right. His successors presided over a dying body. The Byzantine Empire, rich in art and theology, was poor in men and armies. Rival claimants rose regularly. Treason was a seasonal ritual. By the 15th century, Constantinople was surrounded. The Ottomans had cannons, Rome had prayers. The last, Emperor Constantine XI, ruled bravely but futilely. On May 29, 1453, the city fell. Constantine XI died sword in hand, fighting in the streets. The throne was never found. Some say it sank in blood. Rome's poisoned legacy ended not in ceremony but in siege, but its spirit lived in palaces, parliaments, and presidencies. Where betrayal still shadows power, the poisoned throne had finally crumbled. But its curse was immortal. The fall of Constantinople in 1453 was not just the end of an empire, it was the end of a 1,000-year experiment in absolute power. From Julius Caesar to Constantine XI, the poisoned throne had claimed more lives than all Rome's enemies combined. Sultans now sat where emperors once ruled. The Hagia Sophia, once a crown of Christendom, echoed with prayers in Arabic. But even the Ottoman conquerors were not immune to the curse of supreme power. Mehmed the Conqueror, who breached Constantinople's walls, became as ruthless as any Roman. He executed his infant brother to prevent civil war. New empire. The same poison. Across Europe, monarchs watched with awe and fear. The lessons of Rome whispered to every throne room. Never trust family, never relax, never drink unwatched. Wine. In Italy, the Renaissance bloomed over Roman ruins. Artists painted gods while popes plotted like emperors. Even in the Vatican, poison found its place. The Borgias would master it next. Lucretia Borgia, daughter of Pope Alexander VI, was accused of slipping poison rings onto guests at feasts. Whether truth or slander, the myth endured. Rome had passed on its secrets. The Medici ruled Florence with Roman-style grandeur and Roman-style treachery. Assassinations in cathedrals, conspiracies at weddings, and alliances sealed with blood. The imperial mindset never mutated. Modern thrones, whether democratic or royal, still bore the old scars. Presidents with food tasters. Dictators who sleep in different beds each night. The poisoned throne was no longer just a Roman artifact. It had become a metaphor for absolute power unchecked by conscience, and yet historians still debate, why Rome? Why did its most powerful position become its most dangerous? Some blame the size of the empire too big, too unstable. Others cite the lack of succession rules. But the deeper answer lies in human nature. The throne offered everything except safety. To sit upon it meant to challenge fate. The higher one rose, the closer they came to the dagger's edge. Modern archaeologists still uncover villas with secret compartments, places where poison vials were stored. Skeletal remains of emperors are tested for toxins. Some reveal mercury, arsenic, lead-all weapons of palace war. Books and scrolls of the imperial era remain cautious. Few write openly of conspiracies. Many names are missing, erased by successors. Silence became the language of survival. Even the architecture tells stories. Hidden passages in palaces, one-way doors, cells beneath the throne room. Death was part of the design. Yet despite the death, the betrayal, the madness Rome endured for over a millennium. Perhaps it is that paradox that fascinates us still. How an empire so flawed could last so long because Rome's poison wasn't always fatal, it was seductive. People wanted the throne, needed it, died for it, killed for it. Again and again, it promised immortality and delivered extinction. The emperors built aqueducts, roads, amphitheaters. They also built tombs for those closest to them. And in the end, Even the greatest emperors died as mortals, often unloved, often alone. Their statues still stand, but their thrones are empty. Visitors walk through the ruins of Palatine Hill and the Hippodrome. Tourists snap photos, children laugh, but the ground remembers. It remembers the feet that marched toward coronation, and those dragged to execution. It remembers the whispers in corridors, trembling hands pouring wine, sudden silences during dinner. It remembers the poisoned thrones. They are gone now, no longer gold, no longer feared, but their legacy is everywhere. In every palace, every coup, every unchecked ruler who believes they are untouchable, because power never changes. Only the faces do. Rome's final lesson is clear. The higher you rise, the more poisoned the air becomes, and in every age. Someone will always reach for that throne believing they can escape the curse, until the poison reaches them too. A final scroll was unsealed in the vaults beneath Palatine Hill. It bore the insignia of Emperor Domitian, long dead and despised. Within it lay confessions, a secret history of assassins commissioned by emperors themselves to eliminate heirs they feared. The legacy of paranoia was institutionalized, the Council of Silence ensuring that no ruler ever felt secure on the throne again. Even as the empire expanded, it rotted from within, one silent dagger at a time. Beyond the empire's borders, barbarians gathered, not in fear, but in preparation. Word of Rome's poisoned bloodlines had traveled far. Rivals sensed the weakening of the heart, and with every passing year, it beat slower, while senators debated and generals schemed. The outer provinces began to crack. The Eternal City was never built to withstand betrayal from within and pressure from without at once. A dying senator, once a loyalist to Caligula, whispered to a scribe, "The gods did not abandon Rome. We did. With every poisoned chalice, every murdered son, we cursed our future." That parchment, unsigned, became an artifact centuries later, a grim epitaph of an empire that had cannibalized its own glory. Yet in the shadows, the flame of resistance flickered. Philosophers, women of royal blood kept hidden, and sons of exiles dreamed not of thrones, but of redemption. Not all believed power had to be poisoned. Their whispers would echo into the Byzantine age, where the sins of Rome would be remembered and perhaps corrected. History would not forget the poisoned thrones, but neither would it forget those who survived them. And so the Roman Empire passed into legend, its glory immortalized, its sins buried beneath centuries of dust and denial. The poisoned thrones stood empty, cold, and crumbling. But their stories lived on, etched into history with ink as black as night, a warning to every power that would dare rise again, that the greatest threat to a throne is always the one who sits upon it.